Good morning, everyone. I'm Priyan Vaithilingam. I'm a master's student at UIST. And a quick note, I'm applying for PhD in HCI this year. So anybody in the admission committee, hello. So, okay, yeah. So I'm going to talk about Bespoke, which I worked with Professor Philip Guo from UC San Diego, which interactively synthesizes custom GUIs for command line applications by demonstration. So GUIs have been a most visible form of human-computer interaction for past few decades, right? But if you still think about system administrators, data scientists, programmers, researchers, they still use command line a lot. Why do they use command line applications? It's because it's flexible and composable. I can quickly tinker with parameters. I can connect app with pipes. It's easily modifiable. But command line applications do have classic usability problems, like I have to recall the exact syntax of parameters, and there is no indication of what type of values are allowed, what are the relationship between parameters, and it violates the classic recognition over recall principle. Let's take the simple example of an ffmpeg command, right? Why is there no GUI for this? Like, why can't we have a GUI for this? Well, there is a GUI, and this is the GUI. ffmpeg has, like many command line applications, has hundreds of parameters, which means hundreds of input fields. Like, this screen is one of the dozen tabs available in the GUI, and it already has so many inputs, it's scary. So why not a custom GUI? Hand-coding a custom GUI takes a lot of time and experience, and it's very hard to maintain and modify. It's usually done by a whole team, right? But what if I can bring the composability of command line tools and then mix it with the usability of GUI tools? Let's get back to that ffmpeg command. It's a very simple command. It just takes a video as an input and then outputs an audio from the video, right? So we introduce you to Bespoke. Bespoke is like a Jupyter-style notebook. We just extend a Jupyter-style notebook. It has cells. It accepts markdown documentations or even commands. And all you need to do is just type the command, give a few examples, press enter, and we have a GUI ready for you. And we also have a big, beautiful terminal beside it, so that in case you don't want to use the GUI for some of the commands, you can just have a fallback option. So Alice, let's assume Alice is a senior scientist in a computational biology lab, and let's just go through her workflow, right? So she uses this cut-adapt function, command line app, which removes unwanted adapter sequences from RNA sequencing reads. So she just enters her command, and then voila, you already have a rough GUI, which is already kind of easily editable, but as you give more examples of the same command, we adapt your GUI, right? Okay, we know what your approximate error rate for input is. I know what kind of adapter sequences have you been commonly using, and then not just one app. Now, after removing unwanted adapter sequences, now I'll want to compare it with other sequences. I just add one more command and bunch of more examples, and you get a GUI, and it took Alice probably around 30 seconds. On my right, you can see the command in text, and on my left, you can see the GUI, and you already know which is easily editable if I want to run this multiple times. So how do we do this? It's very simple. We just have a parser, we have a type and range inferencer, and we have a GUI generator. I'll go into detail in all of this. Let's get back to our ffmpeg example. So let's go through how this command becomes a GUI in our tool. So first, we take the command, parse it into parameters and values it takes. I is input.mp4, C is copy, etc. And we just don't do this. Like, we recognize splits, we recognize repetitions, we understand pipes, and this is not an exhaustive list. We understand almost any POSIX-style command you pass. And then we try to do a value inference, like what type of values do this take? Like, okay, I use input.mp4, so it's probably a file type mp4. -s is probably taking time, and new.mp3 is file taking in an mp3 type. And as you give more examples, we'll try to, more generalize the GUI you have. Like, for example, if for -e parameter, you give 0.2, 1.4, 2.24 as examples, we know, okay, approximately the value is between 0 to 5 with a step count of 0.01, right? And if you start giving video1.mp4, video2.avi into the input, okay, we know, okay, sure. So you're trying to pass some file of type video. And then now that we have parameters passed and values and range inferred, all we need to do is simply map all the things we have passed into UI elements. Like strings can be text boxes, Boolean can be checkboxes, etc. And what we do is save this as a simple YAML style representation. So it becomes so much more simpler. If you need a really, really granular control on the UI being generated, you can just go edit the simple YAML and the UI changes. And if you want your teammates or peers to use the same GUI, just give them this YAML file. Or if you keep the YAML in a central server and your whole team can use, and as and when you modify the YAML file, the whole team gets the new GUI instantly. So to test Bespoke in real life, we did a very simple exploratory first use study. We had 6 participants. We gave them a 15-minute tutorial of Bespoke, and we told them to brainstorm potential use cases with Bespoke, possibly with multiple stages and multiple apps. And they were asked to think out loud so that we can gauge what kind of scenarios they're envisioning. And we didn't give any problem statement because we did not want to restrict what kind of scenarios they are thinking. I'm just going to give you a quick few examples of what they came up with. P2 came up with one of the machine learning, Kaggle competitions he was going through, predicting Titanic survivors. He was doing that right away. So, okay, why not I do a GUI for it? And then he took the Ludwig API, command line API, which was just released by Uber, and then created a GUI. This probably took him like 30 seconds to 1 minute to create a GUI where you can train your algorithm, test your algorithm, and even show the output directly into the GUI. Right? And P3 did something crazy. So UCSD has this lecture podcasts, which many of the professors sometimes, either forget to give the lectures as lecture presentations or just are not willing to give. He just took the lecture podcast, looks for frame changes in the lectures, and then extracted the frame, did an OCR using Tesseract, and then converted it into PDF. Now everybody has lecture PDF from podcasts. So we saw some versatile and creative use cases. You can read it in our paper. We saw people use rich markdown comments and documentations to help guide people use their GUI. Whenever they not just made it for them, they also made it for others to use. And they told exploring parameters was easy. Range of values, kind of gave me an idea what kind of values each parameter accepts. And P1 to P5, all of them told like this can be very useful for novices to learn. So more than what Bespoke did, how it was implemented and how it was used, the main idea of this paper was what did we learn? What did we learn for future composable GUIs, right? What can we take away from this? Demonstration bootstraps declarative. None of our users knew what kind of GUI they wanted at the start. So giving them a quick way to, patch up a UI gave them a direction into what kind of UI they wanted. So they never, created the exact GUI in Bespoke. They started with something very rough. They tinkered with it. They altered it. And in a few minutes, they had a GUI which they were pretty happy about. Multiple linked representations empower user choice. So we did not restrict the user. We did not restrict the user to use only our GUI. We always had a fallback command line app, and we saw users use command line app for simple commands like git push, git commit. They did not want an UI. So giving many ways to do the same things empowers user. And narrative makes tools feel personal. So if you remove all the barriers to make these GUIs, people will make more GUIs suiting their each narrative. So as soon as the user study was over, P2 went and created many more GUIs for each of the Kaggle competition he is attending to, because like it's so much more simpler. Now I can have so many more GUIs which are personal to each narrative I'm working on. So we believe like the future composable GUIs should be easy to bootstrap, should have multiple representation, should not be restricted to users, and should support users' personal narrative. Thank you very much for having me.
Questions? And over there as well.
Hi, just a quick question. A lot of times when using command line arguments, we use a sequence of command line arguments that are like bunched together. Was there any interesting workflows that you saw users use in Bespoke?
Yeah, so like even in the podcast to PDF, right? Like it was a sequence of command which used output of the previous command into input of the present command. And there was also one user who used like, it was basically one single command pipe, like basically 5 commands piped into one command. And we recognize pipes and then populate it differently, so which makes the GUI look better, but in essence, everything is connected. So yeah, so I mean, there are like very rich ways they think of, like, you know, we told like Bespoke doesn't support loops, so they're like, okay, I'll just have other ways to do loops with just one command. Yeah, so there's a clear, they had clear, you know, views of how commands should be linked. Yeah.
Hi, very cool work. Love to play around with this. 2 questions. One is, would it be possible to use the automatic help that's often included in command line programs to add tooltips automatically by extracting commands?
Okay, in the interest of time, I didn't actually include it, but Bespoke actually parses the manual and gives you like an info for every parameter you use.
Very nice. And I guess the second question is, when I think it's a little bit unfair to say that, oh, we can just do this fully automatically. I mean, there's a lot of design decisions that go into good UI, not just automatic UI, but good UI.
True.
And so I guess, do you have some comments on this? I mean, would you be able to build a complete UI for a complex program that does well for some definition of, you know, usability? Yeah,
so making this Turing complete is, if not impossible, it's very difficult, I agree. But what we can do is, since it is automatically synthesizing GUIs, the synthesizer can actually ensure usability, right? There are these specific practices if you ensure it, you know, it gives good usability of apps. So the synthesizer can ensure that. That is something we want to look into it. But yeah, like we can, like there's always more powerful apps you can create using normal programming style, which you cannot create using Bespoke. But a plan is to keep chasing that tail. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. Thanks for your talk. So I'm pretty bad at executing commands on the command line. I make slips, right, typos where the command doesn't execute at all, or I have mistakes where the command executes, but it does something that I didn't intend for it to do. How can your system handle imperfect input?
Yeah, so currently we expect somebody who knows how to do it to generate a synthesizer. But yeah, that was one of the requests. So P4, who actually made a GUI for system design, wanted much more harder rules and, you know, warnings and other stuff. It is not yet supported, but we expect to support in the future work. Yeah, thanks.
Hi.
Hi.
Michel Baudouin-Lafont, Université Paris-Sud.
Yes.
Very nice work. I think we need to bridge the gap between, you know, command line and visual interfaces. Although personally, I would not call this a GUIs.
Okay.
You know, this is a form-based interface, and
Sure.
to me, form-based is between command line and graphical user interfaces, direct manipulation. But it's certainly on the right track. The question I have is, in command line interfaces, sometimes you have options that are exclusive from each other. Like in the tar command, you can extract or create, and if you do one, some options become unavailable. So is that something you also infer
No, currently we do not infer that, but yeah, we would like to look into it. So we are not sure how we can generalize that, like that inference, but yeah, that's something we want to look into. Yeah, currently Bespoke doesn't do that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.